This is James Luxon for Round 8 Boxing. Delighted to join today with Bob Santos. Bob, let's go back to the beginning. You've been around boxing for over 30 years. What first pulled you into this world?
Well, my cousin fought in the 1956 Olympics, Louis Molina. He was the first Marine ever in the United States to make the Olympic team, and so that's kind of the introduction into boxing in terms of just being proud of a family member to be an Olympian, obviously, and growing up. And he's a lot older than me, but hearing stories from my parents about him, and obviously I didn't get to see him fight in 1956 or when he was number one in the world as a professional. When you only had a few weight classes and only had one world champion, he became number one in the world to Carlos Ortiz, who's one of the great lightweights in the history of boxing. And that being said, that was kind of, the entry into that. And when I was a kid, almost every school had an elementary school boxing team and things of that nature. My family, my father was big into athletics and had us into virtually every sport you could imagine. So that's how that went there. And then in the 70s, national TV, Wide World of Sports, Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Joe Frazier, growing up watching Sugar Ray Leonard. Uh, you know, who couldn't fall in love with the sport of boxing?
Absolutely. Was there a moment that, like a light bulb moment almost, where you knew that you weren't just in it for the love of the sport, but you had something real to offer to the sport as a coach?
Um, well, sure. Uh, you know, Many times being in the gym, um, being around different guys, having opportunities to work with different guys. Like I said, having an athletic background, um, uh, you know, uh, those types of things, uh, I think gave me an advantage being in playing all kinds of different sports. My cousin, my brothers, being in boxing, doing things like that nature, having the knowledge growing up, being in and around the gym. So I think that paid a lot of dividends for sure.
Absolutely. When did you realize the potential of making it a career?
Um, well, I guess that's kind of hard to say. Getting in with a lot of different other guys, having the opportunity to work with world class guys, and one thing kind of led to another, and here we are now.
I mean, let's go back to 2022. We call it your breakout year publicly. Hector Garcia, Puello, Adames, all big wins. What do you think made that year in particular so different?
Um, when preparation meets opportunity, it was just one of those things where everything kind of fell into line. Uh, but if you look at a lot of things prior, some of the guys that I had worked with, Carlos Cruzat, who had lost a couple of times, became cruiserweight champ of the world that I worked with. Hector Lazaraga that I worked with had 8 losses, became world champion. So, a lot of those guys that I worked with in the past, in a lot of ways, I think was uh, more predominant, more profound to me because they were guys that were particularly not supposed to ever do anything. And it was somewhat the same with Hector Garcia being such a huge underdog going into the Chris Colbert fight. So from that perspective, it was still pretty impressive. But when I look at guys like Carlos Cruzat, when I look at guys like I say, Hector Lazaraga, in a lot of ways, that was a lot harder to accomplish than what we did in 2022. But thank God I was recognized, and I'm thankful for that.
Well, those names you mentioned there, we know boxing's a very fickle sport. These are guys that people probably wrote off a long time ago. What is it that you see in these guys that others miss?
Well, it's funny that you say that because Robert Garcia is a very good friend of mine, and I've known Robert for years. And it's kind of funny when he broke out as a coach or started working corners. He wasn't even really a coach; he was an assistant at that time. At right at the Hyatts and Salinas and Monterey, we were both kind of doing those club circuits. Um, that being said, you know, he had Garcia for a time, and he goes, I just never seen anything in him, and I didn't think he'd ever be able to do what he did. So for Bob to do what he did, he goes, it was unbelievable to me because I never thought that guy would ever amount to anything, let alone become a world champion. So, and credit to Robert Garcia for saying that, saying the truth and just being honest. So he goes, I don't think anybody could have took him over the top, but Bob. He goes, because I surely could, and he has said that on a podcast. So kudos to him for that.
Was it a fighter that surprised you, even how far they went?
Um, yeah, to a degree, because he was really going nowhere with his career. Nobody really wanted the kid. Um, And so to take him and what we did on a couple weeks' notice and go out and be such a huge underdog, we were an enormous underdog going into the Chris Colbert fight. And so that was, to me, that was a special, special night.
Now you've learned from icons, Joe Guzan, Emmanuel Stewart, Ronnie Shields. What,
Sure.
what's the most important lesson that still guides you today in your coaching career?
You know, one thing that I learned is as a young coach, you don't know what you don't know, and you can't buy experience. And a lot of these young guys think that they're ready, to guide the horse. And and I was one of those guys to a degree as an assistant coach, like, man, why would Joe do that? Or why would Manny do that? And you think, man, I wouldn't do that if I was in that situation. But you're the assistant, you're not the head guy. You can't really say nothing. And you want to be a loyal soldier. So you go along with the program, only to realize later on, as you guide corners and you get more and more experience, oh man, you know what? They were right. And so the one thing that most people don't understand, you can't buy experience, and you have to be there many, many, many times over because circumstances changes. Look at different things, and it's like, okay, what do you do in this decision? What happens if this happens to this guy? How do you guide the corner in this decision? Do you have the experience? If you look at the case of Mario Barrios, had I not had the experience, he wouldn't have retained his title. He didn't win the fight, but at least I had the knowledge to realize, hey, dude, if you don't win this 10th, 11th, and 12th round, you're not walking out of here with your title. And again, you can't buy that type of experience and things in the corner, being a good corner guy. And when you've been there so many times, done it so many times, there's a calmness, a collectiveness about you, and you understand how to manage, just like in a football game or a basketball game, how to manage the clock. What are you doing in the fourth quarter? When do you save your timeouts? How do you do this? And I think guys that have been there, like Emmanuel Stewart in the past and Joe Goosen, you can't buy that. So these young fighters have to understand, yeah, you can have a pretty good coach in the gym, but that doesn't give him the experience in the corner to guide the horse. That's a whole different ball game.
From your time in all these different gyms and around these trainers, are there any old school gym stories that still stick in your head?
um, there's quite a few of them. One I don't know that I should say, but I guess I will. James Toney and Freddie Roach, because I was at Freddie Roach's gym for a long, long, long time. And James, he would come in, and when guys would, when he was sparring partners, when they'd start bleeding, he'd have some of his assistants throw Tampax in the ring, and he'd say, "Hey, stop that bleeding, bitch." So we've had a lot of interesting things, maybe even more over the top than that. But I mean, maybe that's as far as I'll go on a podcast.
Brilliant. Um, I think a very underrated quality for a coach, but also vital, is being brutally honest with your fighters. How do you balance that with keeping their confidence high as well?
Well, I think you got to be honest with them. You got to give them the truth, because if they can't trust you, they don't believe in you, it's never going to work. Ultimately, it's never going to work. It's like a marriage in a lot of ways. If your wife doesn't trust you, she doesn't believe in you, it's going to be a very, very uh, difficult, hard marriage if you're staying together, or it's just not going to last. So they have to believe in you. They have to trust in you, and honesty is of the most utmost importance. And I pride myself on that. And and like I tell a lot of guys, when you hear with some of these guys, for the most part, and coaches, my first wife, she was terrible. My second wife, she wasn't too good. My third wife, my fourth wife, my fifth wife. At what point aren't you the problem? And I tell coaches that. So it's like when I hear these coaches, oh, the fight of this and the fight of that. At what point aren't you the problem? And I've been fortunate, like I said, to do the right things and been blessed uh, to have guys like Robert Guerrero, who, at 15 years old, uh, turning pro with me, and he's 43 years old. He's still with me and turned his son over to me. And so I think that speaks volumes to me of the type of integrity that I've had in the sport. And when you look at, if you talk to a Brad Goodman from Top Rank, who is our competitor, because mainly most of my guys were with PBC, I can guarantee you they don't got one bad word to say about me. And that speaks values in the sport. You're not going to find any promoter in the sport that's going to have a bad thing to say about me. And I know that for a fact, even when I'm not around. And that's because I pride myself on doing the right thing, giving my best, being a man of my word.
Has there been a time where that tough love ever backfired or potentially the other way around worked better than expected?
Yeah, there's been a combination of both, where it backfires to the point where the fighter rebels against you, doesn't want to hear what's being said. I'll give you an example. Rancis Barthelemy. He's with me now. He's at my gym now. The two-time world champion who I had, and I told him, if you don't make these drastic changes in your life and you don't clean up in who's around you, you're gonna be in big trouble. And sure enough, that's what happened. But fortunately, he's in my gym. He's back, and he tells a lot of my young guys, man, listen to Coach Bob. Man, I didn't listen, and my career could have been completely different. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. Another story is Joel Casamar that I worked with, the '92 gold medal winner, most outstanding fighter from the Olympics. I worked with Joel for a long time. Obviously, he had those great wins over Corrales. And another one, he was doing well and didn't want to listen, didn't want that tough love, and decided to do some things his own way that I thought were not the right way to go. And it backfired on him, didn't work out too well. And then you take a case of a Robert Guerrero, who's done everything that we pretty much asked, and Ayers Landy Lara, who I have and manage, and has done everything that's asked. And the proof is in the pudding, like I tell those guys. Those guys are multimillionaires, multi-division world champions, and they stayed the course. They might not like the hearing what I had to say, but they did it. And look at where they're at today. And then I have the other two examples of where the other guys, but to that point, they realized something though too. When everything fell apart for them, I was still there for them. And so to them, that is a testament to what type of man I've been in my life, true to my word.
Absolutely. What is something, Bob, that you feel modern boxing camps don't emphasize enough of?
Old school boxing. They get too caught up in, physical. When I came into this sport, um, the coach did everything, right? The coach knew what was going on with how the guy was eating, what his weight was. And the coach went on the runs with him. There was no such thing as a conditioning coach. I'm not saying that they don't have a place in the sport now, but it can't take the place of your bread and butter, your meat and potatoes, the boxing. And a lot of these guys get too caught up into, the latest mask that they're wearing for the oxygen or this or whatever those cases may be. And they forget about the meat and potatoes, and that's boxing. And old school camps. Now it's, they got a cook, they got a nutritionist, they got you know, and like I said, I'm sure that it has its place to a degree, but I don't think it could ever replace how I came into the sport. Where to this day, like custom auto, I do it the same way. The fighters, they come to camp, they live with me. And I think when you pay that kind of price with them, it shows because whether consciously or subconsciously, when you have a coach who's in the corner telling you, oh, I need you to do this now, I need you to bite down now, it's consciously or subconsciously, they're looking at this guy, really? I see you at the gym for 4 rounds of the mitts, and you want me to bite down for you? It's not the same as when you're living with the guy. You see what I'm saying? It's not the same when you're living with the guy. You're paying the price with the guy. You're up in the morning with the guy. You're going on the runs with the guy. And I think to me, that my philosophy there is what has enabled me, through the grace of the good Lord Jesus Christ, has been able to separate me from a lot of other coaches.
Are there little things that you focus on in training that most fans would never notice?
Um, well, that's a good question. I think there's a lot of things that fans would never notice when they see a punch. They're not looking at the rotation of the knuckles, where you want them to turn the knuckles. And I learned that. I give all credit to that to Joe Goosen, who is a stickler on on just really, really, really always staying on top of turning the knuckles over, wearing the old school, what we used to call like work gloves, but they're basically were bag gloves, but almost like a work like a steel worker, or so or to that degree, and really working on turning those knuckles over and things of that nature. And when they see a punch, they just see a punch. They're not seeing how many hours go into the detail of really placing that punch with those two big knuckles and turning them down and things of that nature.
Now you've done it all, Bob, really. Trainer, cut man, manager. How does wearing all of those hats shape how you run a fight camp?
Well, that's another advantage that I think that I have on a lot of other guys is, like I said, it's one thing to be in the gym as a boxing coach, but to have experience in corners, knowing what to do, how to guide a ship. Um, what do you do when a guy gets cut? What do you do when a guy gets cut before 4 rounds? Do you do this? Do you make the decision to do this? I'll give you an example. I had a kid, um, Luis Torres, who's going to be a real star, great fighter, coming out beating Walters, who had only lost to Lomachenko, Nicholas Walters, stopped him within 4 rounds. And then we go into fighting a tough Brazilian. And in the fight with the Brazilian, he happened to get his nose broke in the first round with a headbutt and a cut. So you have to make a decision as a coach there, as a manager, as a coach, knowing the whole background of everything. That's what I'm saying. The average coach doesn't have that experience. Do you stop the fight and say, hey, well, we got the cut, we just can't stop the cut, and they stop the fight, goes through no contest? I don't know. Maybe you do that when you have an Olympian on your hands. You don't want to take a chance. But when you have a kid from Mexico, and you may have to roll the dice a little bit. These are the decisions you have to make in real time as a cornerman. And my decision was to say, could you breathe? He says, Coach, I really can't breathe. I said, well, I believe in you. We can do this. I know you can get this win. And he went from the first round on with a broken nose, and we stopped him in the ninth round with a knockout stoppage. But that changed the trajectory of his entire career. So these are the decisions you have to make, and you got to look at the cut. Is it bad enough? Can we manage it? Is the broken nose bad enough that you can manage it? And I think as a guy that's worked thousands and thousands of corners as a cut man, I know what I'm looking at to make those types of decisions as a head coach. And then also as a manager, knowing, hey, this might be his only one bite at the apple. It's not the same thing for an Andre Ward who's coming off winning a gold medal and has all the backing behind him. So these are all the decisions that have to be made. And I think those are the decisions that, I'm fortunate that I've been in those positions so many times. I know what I'm looking at as a manager, as a coach, and then you can make much more calculated decisions. Where a lot of these other coaches who've only been in the gym haven't, they don't know the what's going on in the back of the fight game itself and the opportunities that these guys are going to have. They're not going to be able to make those types of decisions. And that's why you young fighters, it's very important that you make sure you get yourself with a good coach, or Robert Garcia, you know, guys that have experience being there. Those are the type of guys that can really change the trajectory of your career.
We mentioned obviously it's been a long career. What is one moment, good or bad, that stays with you the most when you think about your career now?
Winning trainer of the year in 2022. All the hard work finally paid off, and to be recognized by your peers and the sport. And the one thing is, it's a global sport. So in American football, if you win coach of the year, okay, it's predominantly in the United States. In different sports, it's predominantly in certain countries. One thing about boxing is worldwide. And to be coach of the year, uh, that sticks with me the most. It's something that I'll never forget. And for all the hard work and sacrifice and that we put in as a team, my wife, my son who works with me now, they know everything that goes on behind it. All the Christmases that I missed, Thanksgivings that I missed, Easters that I missed with my family, graduation, birthdays, some of my kids, my my son's championship game for his high school. Those sacrifices, it finally paid off, and to be recognized by the boxing world is something I'll never forget.
With your longevity in the sport, how do you keep growing and evolving as a coach?
Well, I always want to get better, right? And for me, I want to leave no stone unturned for success. And I've always been a competitor. Like I told you, being that I played sports my own self, I played a plethora of different sports. Um, what's interesting is that Danny Garcia's cut man, Ted, his father-in-law was actually my boxing coach in elementary school. So that's another little funny story of what a small community this sport is. But doing all these sports, being a competitor, and the way my father and my mother raised me, my mother always had me going to Sunday school and things of that nature, to be the best type of person you could be, and then to be a competitor, to give your absolute best always, to drive, never settling for what you've accomplished. Keep driving to be the best I can be. I'm not trying to be Freddie Roach. I'm not trying to be Emmanuel Stewart. I'm not trying to be Joe Goosen. I'm trying to be Bob Santos and the best I can be, and accomplish the most I can with the opportunities that I have.
What's something that you wish fans understood more about the people behind the gloves, the trainers in the team, etc.?
It's a brutal, brutal, brutal sport. As much as, in some ways, as much as it's you know, amateur boxing is somewhat more of a sport. Professional boxing is prize fighting, and what I always tell my fighters, I want you guys to be prize fighters. I don't want you just to settle to be a champion. I want you to be a prize fighter. And that to me is a whole different level of fighter and commitment of what it takes to be the best. And there's so much sacrifice that goes on behind the scenes that people wouldn't realize what you have to go through to be the best. The sacrifice, like I talked about earlier, missing, birthdays, missing Christmases, being in camp. Sometimes you got to, I've been in Africa, I've been in, France with Fabrice Tiozo, the only two-time world champion out of the history of France. I had to go to do camp with him out there. Carlos Cruzat, South America. So a lot of times you'll hear these guys say, oh, I want to be a great coach. I want to be this. I want to be that. But they'll never leave their hometown gym. They'll never leave and they want to be the best. Well, you're never going to be the best until you're willing to make those types of sacrifices. Like Robert Garcia, yeah, he has his hometown gym now that he's established himself. But I remember when he would leave to the Bay Area with Nonito Donaire and Victor Conte and go to the snack gym and go to these different gyms and do camps in different places. That's the type of sacrifices that you need to make if you want to be the best or the best you can be, or if you want to be great in the sport. It takes a ton of commitment.
If a young coach is listening to this right now, what would you tell them?
You're going to have to sacrifice much more than you think. And like I always say, you don't know what you don't know. So remember that. So remember when sometimes decisions are being made, oh, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't do this, only to find out 5 years later, oh, thank God I wasn't in charge at that time. You don't know what you don't know, and it's only going to come through time and experience. And don't be in a rush to get your opportunity, because when the opportunity comes, you better be ready to handle the opportunity. And so don't be in a rush. You want to make sure that the preparation has been put in place. And so when the opportunity comes, you can seize it, as in the case of what happened with me. I'm glad the opportunities came when they did and not earlier. I thought I was ready earlier, and it's only to look back, hey, thank God it didn't come earlier, because guess what? It would have probably fallen apart. And remember this, guys, most times in this sport, it's brutal. The business of boxing is very brutal too. As a coach, sometimes you only get one bite at the apple, and you better seize that opportunity.
Bob, you've built a career on making champions out of underdogs. Thank you very much for giving us a little look behind the scenes. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you being here.
Hey, thank you, and God bless you, man, and wish you guys the best. And keep looking out for me at Bob Santos Boxing. And the haters, the guys that like us, the guys that don't, as long as you support boxing, we support you. God bless you again at Bob Santos Boxing. And it's great to be with you, James. God bless you, brother.
Thank you very much.